एकम अक्षरम हृदि निरंतरम भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदय कुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहं महम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वम् चिन्वतामच्युता पवनचलनरूपा आत्मनिष्ठा देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तभावशुक्तिसमये शुद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयुत कुतो रभिः दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं नमो रमण. In this, the Thursday Satsang from Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning, it has been our practice to read verses from Guruvachaka Kovai by Muruganar Swamigal. We read 2 verses selected for us. Each verse reading is followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and that is followed by a 10-minute self-inquiry practice. After these 2 segments of verse reading, meditation on meaning, and the practice are completed, there will be summing up remarks by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande ji, and that shall be followed by Sri Ramanastotram offering. The chanting shall be by Vaibhavji and Pratnama, and the floral offering shall be by Manjanathji from right here. We begin our satsang by taking verse number 128, the first verse selected for us. We find this in the segment investigation into truth. The other two segments that follow this are meditation on the truth and the anubhava, experience of the truth, which is more or less the sequence in which the verse reading, meditation on meaning, and practice have been designed or have fallen in place rather. Verse number 128 is in this subsegment, false association. False association, 128. Without realizing that the world that appears in front of them ultimately brings about their ruin. Those who cling to it, believing it to be real and beneficial, will drown and be ruined in the sea of samsara, like someone who climbs onto a floating bear, taking it to be a raft. I'll read the verse again. This is the investigation into truth. Verse 128, false association is the subsegment. Without realizing that the world that appears in front of them ultimately brings about their ruin. Those who cling to it, believing it to be real and beneficial, will drown and be ruined in the sea of samsara, like someone who climbs onto a floating bear, taking it to be a raft. We have a similar verse in Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, but there the I am the body idea is what is targeted. So here the projection of the I am the body idea, that there is a real world of which this body is a part, and there is a real world which is going to make me fulfilled at some point in time, is what the self, the ignorant self with false association feels, that the world in front is going to complete me or give me fulfillment at some point in time. And it is made of so many different areas that we may spend time in accumulating money for some period of time, then reach varying degrees of wealth. We may even become the wealthiest person in the world, and then realize that that wealth is hardly giving any kind of satisfaction. It may give comfort, as the sage Yajnavalkya says to his wife when they are setting out for Vanaprastha. The question to him is, will the world ever give me happiness? The sage says, the worldly objects will give you comfort, apparent comfort, and along with it, the trouble of maintaining it and worrying about it. Whereas it can never give you the happiness that is true happiness of the self. All these, the love of the world, is only for the love of the self, says the sage. That ultimately we have to realize that it is for what is within the eye that we are seeking, but we are seeking for that in the wrong place. We are seeking for that in worldly objects. Now we understand that by a process of going through various sadhanas, karma, bhakti, yoga, and jnana, the margas are there. Before that, we may go through the purusharthas, the accumulation of wealth, the enjoyment of the senses, and the giving of our wealth and knowledge to others as part of our dharma, artha, kama, and finally we have to come to moksha. The moksha alone gives the real happiness. All the others which have at least some part of it involving the worldly objects is going to leave us unsatisfied, to say the least. Here the words used by Muruganar Swamigal are quite strong. He says, without realizing that the world that appears in front of them ultimately brings about their ruin, those who cling to it believing it to be real and beneficial will drown and be ruined in the sea of samsara. Will be drowned and ruined, he says. And in another sloka that Bhagavan has written separately, Bhagavan says, it is similar to one of the Ulladunarpadu verses, but it is not that if you take the world to be real and the body to be real, then you will be eaten up by time. Kalam unnai unnum. You will be eaten up, you will become food for Yamaraja. That is what here Muruganar says as, you will meet your ruin if you get occupied with accumulation of worldly objects merely. And the verse completes in a different way, whereas if you find out the source of the I, inquire into the source of the I and find out the self, then you will eat up and digest what is called time. Kalam unnai unnum poi ni kalate unnuvai. The Atma will consume time and place and remain self-luminous, is the teaching in that verse. Whereas if one merely gets occupied in taking the worldly objects to be real, then one is going to meet the ruin. One can simply understand this in one of the talks, how Bhagavan mentions about the way in which desires are fulfilled. That the Priya is that we see a mango while walking in the market. While we are walking in the market, the mind is off into its various thoughts. Thousands of thoughts are running. Then for a moment we sight a mango which is so ripe and so nice to look at. That desire for the mango, Bhagavan says, it arrests all the flow of thoughts and it gives you happiness. But then it doesn't stop there. You want to possess it. You see many others approaching. You see that the mango seller may somehow deny you getting that. Those thoughts come in. Then somehow you bargain with him and get it. The moment of possession puts aside the thoughts that were coming about not getting it. Then you take it home and keep it in the shelf because there are 2-3 guests and you are not able to have it. And only one you have got that day. You weren't expecting the guests. So you wait, thinking of the mango and getting other thoughts as to when you will be free. Then finally you go in and consume it. And these thoughts, the multiple thoughts about when am I going to have it, those are displaced. In each of these stages, Bhagavan says, the happiness is not due to the object, but it is because the multiplicity of thoughts is displaced by one thought. The rambling, disturbing, sorrow-giving multiplicity of thoughts is displaced by one thought. And finally we are back to the cycle because the Atma will never be satisfied by the desire and satiation cycle. This is called as desire and satiation cycle. The Atma is never going to be satisfied with this. This Atma will be satisfied only when it is taken to its own real source. That source which is ever present, and which is the source of everything. Till then, the seer or the enjoyer is going to be falsely led that the worldly thing is going to satisfy him, but only to be disappointed with the coming back of all the thoughts as soon as the mango has been taken. So the desire and fulfillment cycle in the world is never going to fulfill the self. The self will remain tripta only when it reaches its source, only when it reaches the Atman, the source of everything. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in practice where, when the thoughts arise, and if we follow it, we are going to go towards the world. Bhagavan says, do not follow the thoughts or try to complete them, but inquire for whom is this thought. The answer will be singular. The answer will be that this thought is for me. Immediately inquire, who am I? And take the attention back to the source, which is the source of real happiness. Let us sit in practice for 10 minutes. Revatima, you can set the time for us. Thank you. Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang by taking up the second verse, 1222. It is in the segment Anubhava, experience of the truth. The subsegment is the nature of liberation. The nature of liberation. Verse number 1222. That which shines as the residue is the peace that is wholly consciousness. That indeed is eternal Shivam. That residue, the consummate supreme, is Aham, I. The ego-free Mauna, that is the culmination of liberation. Bhagavan. This is a quote taken from Ulladanarpada Anubandham. I shall truly declare the essence of the Upanishads, which express the ultimate conclusion of all the Vedas. When the ego I dies and the pure I exists as that, Brahman, that I whose form is consciousness, alone remains. That is the last verse in Ulladanarpada Anubandham. Let us go back to this verse again. That which shines as the residue is the peace that is wholly consciousness. That indeed is eternal Shivam. That residue, the consummate supreme, is Aham, I. The ego-free Mauna, that is the culmination of liberation. So, the duality of the I and the world, the seer and the seen. In Drigdrishya Vivekam, the enquiry into God is put aside as unknown for the moment. And of course, the discussion will be taken up in Anubhava. The enquiry is only into the seer and the seen. And which of the two is the conscious entity is inquired. Obviously, the seer, as Bhagavan says, when he came in search of Arunachala and saw that the hill is the unmoving, unshakable mountain that is in front of him, the presence of the hill and Bhagavan's state drives Bhagavan's mind inward, and he asks, Kandavan evan ena karuthinul nada, Kandavan inrida ninradu kande. Both the seer and the seen, they vanish into the pure Aham, the Nindra Porul or Ulla Porul. The Ulla Porul alone remains as the residue. The gap between Arunachala and Ramana vanishes and they merge. Both merge in the supreme reality of Aham within. Nindra Porul Kanden, Kandanan Enrida Karuthelavillai. From that supreme Aham, which is pure consciousness, nothing separated itself as I to be anxious to say, I have seen. Now, when it does not do so, will it ever rise? Kandilan Enrida Karuthelma. When it realizes that everything is that consciousness. Now the ocean of consciousness alone is there. Arunachala alone exists. The pure Aham alone is. Then to whom to not affirm? To say that I have not seen. So neither is there an anxiety to claim that I have seen God, nor is there a truthfulness of having not seen to be expressed to others, as one doesn't want to claim something which is not experiential. Even that is not there because there is no other to whom to claim or to say I have not seen. The merger of the seer and the seen in the supreme Aham is complete, and that pure consciousness alone is the residue. This is called as para vibhuti, the vibhuti that we wear on our forehead in some of our religious systems here, that is prepared out of some materials burnt and in a particular way with some mantras, and then it is given as the apara vibhuti, that is a symbolic remainder of the para vibhuti. The para vibhuti, as Sri Krishna says in the chapter 10, is that is the ahamatma gudakesha sarvabhuta shayastita aham adischa madhyamcha bhutana ante evacha. That is the para vibhuti. Only those who cannot meditate on this para vibhuti can meditate on the other vibhutis of mine, says Sri Krishna. And from there, verse number 10, chapter 10, verse 20, he moves on to describe his various other vibhutis, which are objects of meditation, which help one aggregate one's own self, gather the tapas, so that one will have the tapasvic energy to start meditating on the aham, on the atma, what is the truth of myself. And Bhagavan helps us start that enquiry right from the beginning, that when thoughts arise, Bhagavan says, do not pursue them, do not try to complete them. On the contrary, inquire for whom is this thought. Now, what is the final residue of this process? When we inquire into the Ulladu Narpadu verses, especially the verses from verse number 9 through verse number 22, we find that Bhagavan takes us the process of holding the ahankar and seeking its source. For 4 verses, he takes us beyond the duality of the knowledge and ignorance. And then he takes us beyond the dualities of the first person, the second person, and the third person. Only after the first person arises, the second and third person arises, he says. Then he takes us beyond the 3 phases of time, past, present, and future. In the present itself, hold the self. And like this, he takes us beyond the vibhutis, beyond the greatnesses of that Atman, into the real greatness. The last 3 verses in that segment, 20, 21, and 22, are about God itself. Who is that Kadavul? Who is that transcendental being? Who is that para vibhuti? Bhagavan says, leaving the seer to say that I have seen God, I have had darshan of God, he is only a manomaya kakshi. And he goes ahead and says that when Arjuna was given the Vishwarupa darshana, how can Arjuna be apart and still see the whole cosmos? If he is apart, then there is an imperfection, or there is something left out from that fullness of vision. That is why Sri Krishna says, see whatever you desire to see. So that is also not the real vibhuti. The real vibhuti is the dissolution of the I, the seer, who is seeing that Vishwarupa darshana. And we can see Bhagavan giving the formless darshana in at least 2 different situations. Of course, there might be many other devotees who have seen Bhagavan's form just vanish in front of their eyes. And it is the anubhava of many Atmavicharis that they come to a point where one comes to the blank. Even when one holds the self directly, see, there comes a point of time where one need not let go of thought one by one. The vasanas have reduced in their force so much that one is able to directly hold the I. Of course, with some effort. Now there, what happens is that the holding of the I directly is a blank. There is nothing to perceive there. There the Vishwarupa, the entire cosmos, is seen as that blank. But that is not a void, that is the Purna Vastu. All the Kalyanas present in all the Vibhutis are present in this self-attention. In this self-attention, all the Kalyanas are present there. That is why Bhagavan says the vibhuti, the final residue, is the pure I. Aham set aham aduvagin. When the first I thought, which is actually aggregating many other thoughts and claiming that is me, when that I thought is dismantled, and obviously to dismantle that ego, all the things that it is holding have to be let go of or dismantled. And when that I thought is dismantled, one reaches the final residue of the pure aham, which is the fullness of consciousness. It is the ego-free mauna, the culmination of liberation. There is nothing more to seek. The கண்டவன் எவன் என கருத்தினுள் நாட கண்டவன் என்றிட நின்றது காண்போம் கண்டனன் என்றிட கருத்தெழாது கண்டிலன் என்றிடவும் கருத்தெழாது. The consciousness alone remains without any necessity, without the other, for one to claim or to say, no, I have not seen. There is only the pure aham. Aham aham iti sakshat atma rupena bhati. The self shines self-luminously as the I. And of course, to Gambhiram Seshaya, Bhagavan says, hold that spurana and do not ask anything of it. Do not ask anything of God. Then what will God do? When we don't ask anything of God, God gives himself. The Atma gives itself totally and consumes us totally. And one realizes that the self alone is Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashaya Sthita. Ahamadischa Madhyamcha Bhutana Mantayevacha becomes Atma alone is. The Bhuta, the Adi, the Madhya, the Anta, they all vanish. And the pure consciousness alone shines. In fact, the shining of the Chit is also subsumed or consumed by the Sadvastu. And there is mere fullness of being. Till that point, Atma Vicharam will not leave us. Till it takes us to that point, it will not leave us. At that point, Atma Vicharam too becomes redundant, becomes consumed in the pureness of the self. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us practice Atma Vicharam for the next 10 minutes. Revatima, you can help us out once again. Thank you. Namo Ramana. I request Venkatesh ji to give us the summing up remarks. Namo Ramana, sir.
Namo Ramana. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Dhyanamoolam Gurur Murti, Pujamulam Gurur Padam, Mantramulam Gururvakyam, Mokshamulam Gurur Kripa. Moramana. If you look at from Vedanta perspective, two verses that were chosen today were exactly the opposite. What you should do and what you should not do, where you should be and where you should not be. So we know that beautiful story of the 10 men, right? The 10 men who were crossing a river, and what happened was when they reached the other side, they realized that there were only 9 of them, and one person was missing. What happened in that? That when started counting, they were counting what was seen in the world that was seen outside them. They were counting, and they were counting only 9. So they had dukkha. So they had problems that the 10th man is missing. Till somebody comes and says, "Hey, you've actually forgotten yourself." So the first part of the story is the first verse, which is the world scene. And the second part of the story, where somebody comes and says, "Hey, you are actually that," is the next verse. So that is the reality that we all have to experience in our lives. So one is the loka vichara, and it is thinking about the world, and the other one is the atma vichara, which is about who you really are. Each one of us is. So let's give an example, a simple example. So a person buys a beautiful car. Okay, why does he buy a beautiful car? So that he can spend some good quality time in the car, enjoy the air conditioning, enjoy the features of the cars, watch a movie or whatever it is. And suddenly what happens, there's a traffic jam. Now traffic jam is there, and this car is beautiful car, maybe it's a Mercedes, goes and parks in the traffic jam, and in the traffic jam there is also a bullock cart. A bullock cart is also standing in that traffic. Now, this person who's sitting in this beautiful Mercedes-Benz limousine is actually very, very agitated. He's agitated because there's a traffic jam. He needs to go somewhere. He needs to do something by which he has to achieve something. So what happens? He experiences dukkha. But why did he buy that Mercedes-Benz? He's bought the Mercedes-Benz to be able to give him sukha. But actually, when he's sitting in that beautiful Mercedes-Benz, he's not experiencing the sukha. His mind is all the time outside. He's thinking about something else that needs to happen. And he's bought this Mercedes not for his happiness. He wants to show this car to everybody and say that, feel that, oh, I am big. But look at the bullock cart fellow. The bullock cart fellow is also stuck in the same jam, but he does not care. He is sitting down quietly, and this fellow is honking. The Mercedes-Benz is honking behind the bullock cart. He's honking. The bullock cart fellow is saying, "If you want to overtake me, overtake me." He doesn't have a horn. He doesn't have anything. He's just sitting quietly. He is experiencing bliss at that point of time. So the first part of the thing is that we experience the world and we think that will give us sukha, but it really does not give us sukha. Nandakumar was talking about the desire satiation cycle. What really happens is when you do a particular karma, we do an action, what happens because of that? There is some samskara, there is an impression that is formed because of doing the particular action. When with the samskaras, then what happens? There's a vasana, there is a tendency. Because of the karma action, there is a samskara, which is an impression. And because of the impression, what happens? There is a vasana. there is a tendency. And because of the tendency, there is a vritti, there is a thought pattern. There is a thought pattern that happens. Oh, this is the right way. This because of the thought pattern, again you get back to karma, and this cycle goes on of karma, samskaras, the vasanas, and vrittis just continues to go round and round, and then we get caught in that. So why is the desire born? Desire, we all know, is born because of ignorance. We really do not know that there's a rope. We think there is a snake, and all the problems because of that, because of the projection. So if you look at management, all training that is happening in, is it for the first part of the first verse or the second verse? It's always for the second verse. Oh, why do you come for management, for training? You want to do stress management. You want to do, life, work, home balance, or you want to do something else like inner peace. I want inner peace. So, what is all the management schools are all about? Well, teaching you that. Sorry. All management schools teach you about this. That it doesn't say that you want to achieve more, do more. No. Most of the management schools are talking about mauna, keeping quiet. You go to an upasana course, 10 days they will make you keep your mouth shut. They'll put you in some place and say you can't talk to anybody. You don't have mobile, you don't have TV, you don't have newspaper, you don't have anything. You keep your mouth shut. Now that itself will give you so much of peace. So, like if you see management, the maximum number of books you could read are in management. But management is very, very simple. It is the intuition. Whatever you feel at that point of time is right, is right. Vedanta is also like that. There's so many books. But people say it is Ati. Bhagavan says it is Ati Sulabham. It is like seeing a gooseberry on your hand. It is as simple as that. So I took some little lines. No bliss is in the infinite. There is absolutely no bliss in the finite. No bliss in the finite, and there is no sorrow in the infinite. So what do we mean by that? There is in the infinite, which is everything. There is no sorrow because there is sorrow. Why? When there is dvandva, when you are there and there's something else there, there is sorrow. So coming back to the second verse, it says that the residue only shines. Like I remember when in our childhood, when mommy used to boil the milk to make koa, when all the milk is koa has been removed, what we wanted a utensil because the real stuff was that burnt part of the milk which was lying in the utensil, the stainless steel utensil. That last part is actually that's what it is, the real stuff. So exactly the same thing. That when you give away, liberation is what is giving away, is letting go. The more you let go, what will be remaining is that. So, I read some two beautiful lines. Brahman does not know, for it is knowledge itself. So Brahman says, "Oh, we've got to know something." No, when you are Brahman, you don't have to know something. See, that's what they say, Purnamada Purnamidam. If you are whole and complete, if you are everything, even if you remove some part of that everything, what remains is only everything. Nothing. It's not that if from the finite, if you remove finite, it becomes limited. No, it has always been finite, infinite, and it will remain infinite. So Brahman does not know, for it is knowledge. And second one, which I really like is, it does not enjoy, for it is enjoyment. It does not seek peace, because it's peace itself. So this is we always think we're not complete, and we're trying to seek something. No, the trick about life is letting go. The more you let go, then only you will experience that self within. This when you will now the trick about the whole thing is God within or without? It's the thing. If God is omnipresent, He has to be outside and He has to be inside. So is the question that we have to ask ourselves? So are we in God or God is within us? It's a very important thing that we need to do manana in our lives to be really able to understand the truth. Once we understand that everything outside, every external leaning that we have will not give us any joy, and our nature is joy, then we should look inwards and do if the mind still bothers you, do self-inquiry, serious self-inquiry, constant self-inquiry, and realize who you really are. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana, sir. Thank you. May I request Vaibhavji and Prarthnama to start the chanting of Ashtotram. Namo Ramana, sir.
Yes, sir. Namo Ramana. Bharadwaja Vishwanatha Virachitam Sri Ramana Shtotra Shatanamavalihi Apada Satchet Sukhavari Rashe Yasyormi Matram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chinta Vihinam Hridicintayami Om Mahasena Mahumshena Jataya Namaha Om Sri Ramanaya Namaha Om Gurave Namaha Om Akhanda Samvidakaraya Namaha Om Mahaujase Namaha Om Karanodbhavaya Namaha Om Jagadhitaavataraya Namaha Om Sri Bhuminathasthalosthitaya Namaha Om Parasharakulottamsaya Namaha Om Sundararya Tapahparaya Namaha Om Kamaniya Sucharitraya Namaha Om Sahayamba Sahayavate Namaha Om Shonachalamaholina Manasaya Namaha Om Swarnahastakaya Namaha Om Srimadvadashantamahasthale Labda Vidyodayaya Namaha Om Mahashakti Nipatena Prabuddhaya Namaha Om Paramarthavide Namaha Om Tivraya Namaha Om Pitrupadandeshine Namaha Om Indumaulina Pitrumate Namaha Om Pituradeshatah Shailam Praptaya Namaha Om Tapomayaya Namaha Om Udasinaya Namaha Om Mahayogine Namaha Om Mahotsahaya Namaha Om Kushagradhiye Namaha Om Shantasankalpa Sambrambhaya Namaha Om Susandrashe Namaha Om Savitre Namaha Om Sthiraya Namaha Om Tapakshapita Sarvangaya Namaha Om Pullambuja Vilochanaya Namaha Om Chandrikasitaha Shri Manditanana Mandalaya Namaha Om Chutavatyam Samasinaya Namaha Om Churnidakhila Vibramaya Namaha Om Veda Vedanta Tattvajnaya Namaha Om Chinmatrine Namaha Om Trigunatiraya Namaha Om Virupaksha Guhavasaya Namaha Om Virajitachalakృతये Namaha Om Uddiptanayanaya Namaha Om Purnaya Namaha Om Rachitachala-tandavaya Namaha Om Gambhiraya Namaha Om Paramacharyaya Namaha Om Suprasannaya Namaha Om Abhayapradaya Namaha Om Dakshinasya Nibhaya Namaha Om Dhiraya Namaha Om Dakshinabhimukhaya Namaha Om Swaraje Namaha Om महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ सम्मदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचल स्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ मृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणादृशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रह सुप्रवाह विवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीर नित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनासेकरान् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तर ज्योतिषे। ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि। नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संगिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि। नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡು ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय
ರಮಣ ಅಕ್ಕ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.